So this is not going to be a deep video. I'm not going to get deep into game mechanics, nor is this video scripted. I really just want to talk to you all about my experience with Path of Exile 2, as I did get to play it earlier this month at an event in California alongside several other YouTubers, creators, journalists, streamers. The whole Brady Bunch was there. Even my skeletons were at the event, and they might have a few things to say at some point in this video. But for those of you that are not familiar with PoE 2, because my channel isn't really focused on ARPGs, just think, oh man, I don't know if I should say this. I'm very hesitant to say this, but I feel like it's a... Please don't kill me, PoE players. Think Diablo, but deeper, more quality, better visuals, better mechanics, better gameplay, better. Like a dungeon crawler type game where you go through all these dungeons and get better loot. It has a campaign, usually an endgame system. PoE 2 confirmed to have a big endgame system, in fact. It's launching into early access on December 6th for consoles and also PC, which is why everybody's talking about it right now. Now, I'd actually declined an invite to a PoE 2 event a few months back. Many times as a content creator, you have to weigh the opportunity cost of going to some of these events, especially when these events are super far away from where you are. You have your travel days, the discomforts that can come with long distance travel, all to go to, you know, a one day or a half day event where you don't even know exactly what you're going to be doing at the event. But with that said, I committed to the November event, and holy crap, I do not regret even one bit deciding to, you know, give up 3 days of my time, 3 full days, plus preparing for travel and all that to check this game out. This has to be the best feeling ARPG I've ever played. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that the game will be the best ARPG ever made. I couldn't know that right now, but feel-wise and initial impressions, it really felt next generation and it was noticeable. And I thought that was really cool. And before I get more into my opinion on why I'm saying that, let's preface here that these are initial impressions, and many times initial impressions can be different from final impressions on a game. These are initial impressions. Also, please note that I am historically more of a casual ARPG player, meaning I've loved many ARPGs. I grew up playing, you know, Dark Alliance, Gauntlet Legends. You guys remember that one? I've played all of the Diablo games. I played a little bit of PoE 1. And with many of these games, it's usually just like one playthrough through the campaign, and maybe I dabble a little bit after that. But that's usually the extent of my play for ARPGs, and I enjoy them, and I got my enjoyment out of them, but in no way, shape, or form am I this very knowledgeable, hardcore ARPG player, and I think that's important to note. But I also just want to quickly say that I am absolutely a gamer that greatly respects deep systems and mechanics, especially in RPGs, regardless of subgenre of RPGs. And you guys will see me speak out all the time against companies that dumb down franchises way too much or streamline mechanics to the point of where they lose touch with the OG fan base that helped them get to where they are at. So I am a bit of a casual player with not a ton of ARPG knowledge, but I look for and greatly respect deep systems and mechanics. That's where I'm coming from. Let's get into it. So in my hands-on time, I played the Ranger class the most. I think I got to like level 7 or 10, which really isn't that far, especially compared to some at the event. And my second most played class was the mercenary class, but I also actually played the 4 other classes as well. So I kind of divided my time into trying to at least experience a little bit of everything with a focus a bit more on the Ranger and the mercenary. This is actually kind of interesting because Larian Studios launched early access for Baldur's Gate 3 with 6 playable classes, and then throughout early access they released more, and then version 1.0 had 12 playable classes. Well, Path of Exile 2 is doing something similar here. It's launching early access with 6, and by the time version 1.0 comes out, there will be 12 playable classes. But within even just minutes of playing PoE 2, I was telling myself in my head, this feels really good. You know, the general gameplay feel, the movement, everything just feels solid and very high quality. And movement in this game, you can actually do point and click, like, you know, old school ARPGs or CRPGs. You can do WASD, or you can use controller, all of which I think work pretty well. I did WASD the entire time, and that wasn't actually a thing in PoE 1. And WASD felt really good to me. And I think actually from hearing some other players talk about this, I think it might even be a better choice than point and click for some of the more mobility focused classes. The only weird thing with WASD, and I'm sure like regular ARPG players probably wouldn't feel like this is weird at all, the only weird thing is that you have to use your mouse to like aim where you want your character to be facing, the direction that you want your character to face. So like I'll be moving around with WASD, but my character will be like looking this way and like sidestepping in the direction that I want it to go. But it only took like, I don't know, like 30 minutes to get used to that, and then I was perfectly fine. But the first few hours that I was playing, like I was in like this state of awe at how good things felt and also looked. And I think a lot of other people were also like that. I sat next to YouTuber Legendary Drops, and he was experiencing pretty much the same thing I was. We were just like, holy crap, like this is fucking good. The base core gameplay, you know, the running around, the attacking, the dodging. It's important to note that PoE 2, all classes start off with like this base roll dodge. It's part of the core fundamental movement mechanics of every class in this game, is having that dodge. Feels really, really good. And it adds like a big sense of control that you have over your character's movements, and I think that's important in a lot of RPGs. But all of this just feels really, really polished and also refined, which is kind of crazy because this is launching into early access. This is not version 1.0. So if it's launching into early access like this, like holy crap, like these guys are on the right track for whatever this game is going to be by the time version 1.0 comes out. It is launching in a state, I think it is, at least from the build that I played, that is better than like most game launches out there. And it's incredible to see. Now that doesn't mean that the servers are going to work right on launch night. So don't get this game and then go, Wolfheart said it was launching in such a good state. There's probably going to be server problems, maybe for even a couple days when this game launches into early access on December 6th. But we didn't have to deal with any of that at this event. But touching quickly back on that core foundational gameplay feel, perhaps most importantly, what I noticed here was the attacks and the spells and everything just feels really impactful.
Fire in the hole! Need a sec.
And I weigh this pretty high in things that I look for when I play any RPG. I want to feel that impact behind my attacks and killing monsters. It's really satisfying in this game. They really are just nailing that. And on top of just the general gameplay feeling really good, something that really stood out to me personally was the moment-to-moment gameplay. It's extremely engaging in PoE 2. It's very meaningful. You have to be deliberate with your actions. You have to pay attention to what's going on in the game, at least from my initial impressions perspective from someone who isn't a professional ARPG player. But this really stood out to me. And as much as I've liked a lot of ARPGs in the past, many of them to me have felt like they become purely number games where you try to get the highest number possible through the best build optimization with the best gear that you can have. And then you take those numbers and that power from the skill tree and all the math that you did, you bring it into the game itself, and then you just kind of spam buttons. You don't really have to fully engage with the game all the time. PoE 2 didn't feel like that. Not that it's not going to have that. I think that will be a big part of the game, but it didn't feel like it was fully focused on that. It felt like it was a mix between, you know, encouraging you to have a good build and get good loot mixed with active, engaging gameplay. And that really stood out to me. And a lot of this has to deal with, you know, creature design. Now, not every creature in this game requires like full focus, but when you're even just running around on some of these maps, you can die if you don't pay attention. And the bosses in this game, you guys have probably seen plenty of boss footage, how cool these bosses look. Well, they're not just cool looking. They have a ton of really cool mechanics, and there's a variety of different things that they can do. And in many boss fights, you're kind of trying to study their animations a little bit, looking for the cues to know when to dodge, memorizing their attack patterns. Very, very engaging, a lot of these boss fights. And even though I died a lot, these were deaths that I was really happy to experience because they were motivating deaths. And if I didn't die at all, I don't think I would be that excited about this game because it would feel kind of like a brain dead type game where you just spam things. I didn't feel that way at all. I died and I was like, oh, I got to get back there and overcome this challenge of this boss. And when I eventually did, that feeling of accomplishment adds a lot to the gameplay. And this brings me into the multiple skills that you are actually incentivized to use in this game. So in PoE 1, it's known to be a one button spam game. Like you get this one skill, you make it as powerful as possible, you go into a map and you just spam that one skill. PoE 2 has a system where it kind of encourages you to use multiple skills for your character. There's combos that you can do, like, you know, maybe you freeze opponents with one spell and then you shatter them with a different spell. And this encourages like this dynamic type of combat where you're using skills to use other skills, and it makes it really, really engaging. And personally, I much prefer a game where I'm incentivized to use multiple skills versus just spamming one skill. So I think they did a really good job with that. And I don't think it's going to upset a lot of the core hardcore PoE 1 players. In fact, many of them seem to be kind of excited for this. And also on a similar subject that kind of ties into the encouragement of players doing multiple things versus just spamming one button over and over. This game has like this dual specialization passive element to it for the passive skill tree, to where you can have your main weapon and you fill out the passive skill tree for that main weapon. But when you switch to a secondary weapon, the passive tree actually switches to represent your secondary weapon. There's not really like an opportunity cost to focusing on two weapons. So like in PoE 1, I remember when I was playing, I was using a sword and a bow, and people were kind of getting mad at me like, Wolf, that's not how you play this game. You need to only focus on one weapon, otherwise you're not gonna succeed, especially at endgame. And I was like, well, what the heck? I have two weapon slots and I'm having fun doing this. Well, PoE 2 seems to fully, understood that, and it's allowing players like me to actually have two weapon setups without it being like a negative to your build. It's really, really cool. And in fact, I think there's going to be some really powerful weapon combinations that you can have. A lot of people have talked about, being a mage that has a fire staff and your secondary weapon is an ice staff, and, the cool synergies that you can get from that. So really, really cool what they did with skills, combos, and also having a secondary weapon being something that doesn't take away from your focus on your main weapon. In fact, it can actually probably be a really good thing for many builds out there. All right, let's talk a little bit about the world and the visuals just quickly here. The intro cinematic to this game is really, really good. I think you can watch this online right now. Very dark and gritty and mature. There's no Dragon Age Valgardification going on here for PoE 2. This shit is dark and it's badass, and it's just the way that I want an ARPG to be. When you're out in the world, of course it has that dark, gritty atmosphere, but the really cool thing is that the visuals in this game are just so high quality for an ARPG. Like the particle effects of the fire and the spells and everything look so good. They're so satisfying to look at, and this kind of brings like this vibrance to a dark world, but it doesn't take away from the darkness. Does that make sense? And I'm not typically someone that obsesses over a game's visuals. I will obsess over a game's art direction. If the art direction isn't the right direction, it can have a big impact on a player's enjoyment of a game, as it kind of kills the vibe or the mood if it's not the direction that you want. But PoE 2 just nails not only just the quality of the visuals, just things looking very, very crisp and high quality, but it also nails that vibe and that art direction. And moving on to character progression, which is important to these games, but I don't want to get too deep into systems and mechanics here, because not only do I not fully understand everything, but it also can be quite confusing. I just want this to be a relaxed video. You just kind of get the feeling of how I'm feeling about this game. Character progression in this game is insane. It's awesome. There's so much to do, so much to progress. You don't even necessarily have to engage with everything if you're feeling like it might be a little bit too overwhelming. I feel like if you're someone that is seeing like the gigantic passive skill tree and you're feeling like, oh no, I can't play this game, I understand that feeling, but I would encourage you to still give it a shot, because you can just go through the campaign of this game and you don't necessarily have to engage with that entire passive skill tree. You can keep it quite simple. And speaking of the campaign, I do just want to quickly mention that the game is launching into early access with the first 3 acts, but there's going to be 6 acts in total. I think the first 3 are estimated to take, on average, players like around 25 hours or so. But getting back to the skills and the passive tree and stuff like that, Grinding Gear Games has made a few things in this game a little bit more accessible. It's a little bit easier to understand how skills work. They have like some recommended skill gem list to where you don't have to just guess what gems and skills you might need to use. They have a recommended list, so if you want to follow that will get you through just fine. But there's just so much to character progression, and this ties into the engagement of the world. So while you're out, you're going to be finding new skill gems, which skill gems in this game allow you to use new skills. They're not tied to any class, by the way. Any class can use any skill gem. And because these skills in this game, because the core gameplay feels so good, finding a new skill gem is extremely exciting. Even if you don't end up using that skill, for a long time. Just trying it out is just a blast, and looking to find new skill gems is a lot of fun. Then we have all these support gems where you can add a ton of them to a skill to add these unique affixes and customize them the way that you want. There's a whole bunch of other items, and then of course there's all the gear in this game, and the rarity of gear. All of that matters to most ARPGs out there. Finding new cool gear is very important, and from what I played, this game seems to have nailed that. There is a huge variety of gear in this game, and so many things that you can do with the gear to make it unique to your character. And there's even gear out there, kind of reminds me of Baldur's Gate 3, where you might find like a particular cloak or a particular chest piece that helps your particular build, that has some special effect on it or affix that helps the build that you're running. For example, there are like pieces of gear in BG3 that are perfect for the Githyanki race. It lines up perfectly with that. Well, in PoE 2, there seems to be a lot of gear that's very specific to certain builds or playstyles as well. Like you can pick up a chest piece that like alters the way that your character dodges or something like that. Like there's a lot of cool effects that come with a lot of the gear outside of just, you know, a numbers game of increasing statistics and attributes and things like that. And I do also want to briefly mention the ascendancies for each of the classes, and these are basically your subclass choice. And I think it's really cool how you don't just get these like straight up. Like you have to actually earn these and do certain things in order to unlock these subclasses. And it's really motivating to progress, to get to the point of where you can unlock these unique subclasses. So as far as character progression goes, at least from my perspective, they nailed it in this game. I'm very interested in the progression mechanics and learning some of them, even if I don't fully learn exactly how all of them work or don't become a professional at them. And it's also nice that they did add some accessibility to this game, meaning it's a little bit easier for a first-time player to understand what they should be doing or to be recommended certain skills, but also it doesn't like railroad you into that. It's just a little bit of a guide to help newer players without sacrificing the depth and complexity that the game can offer. You can be either type of player and I think get some enjoyment out of this game. As far as endgame goes, I'm just going to keep it quick because I'm rather ignorant on this. I did see an entire presentation on it, but I didn't necessarily understand everything. But I think there are 7 different systems that you can engage with in the endgame at the start of early access, and there's going to be more as the game develops. And it seems like it's going to offer a lot of content for players that want to play more than just going through the campaign once or twice. And there's some really cool things that you can do in this game. Like, I don't know if they're called trials, but there's something that I remember Grinding Gear talking about, to where you can do like these challenges in some of these dungeons, like a no-hit challenge. And if you complete that dungeon with that challenge, you get like special unique items or something like that, or some progression mechanic increases for your character. But knowing that the game offers challenges like that really motivates a player like myself, especially in endgame, because many times you get to endgame, you get so powerful in a lot of games that you do kind of get to turn your brain off and just kill everything. Well, if these special challenges are offered for certain dungeons, and I'm sure these are offered in PoE 1 and other ARPGs, I just am not as familiar with them myself, that gives players like me something to look forward to keep challenging, you know, my skill and my builds and everything. And I'm very excited to do like a no-hit dungeon. Like that's going to add a lot of intensity and engagement to dungeons that may have otherwise, you know, started feeling quite boring and redundant at that point in the game. Before we get into my summary of impressions here, this video is going on way longer than I expected. Thank you guys for all of you guys that have listened to this video all the way through. I do want to say that I did actually look up several other ARPG content creators and wanted to hear their perspective on PoE 2 from what they played. And I'm very, very happy to say that I think every single creator that I've listened to seems to be really excited for this game. And that's very important to me. Even as a player who's coming into this as more of a casual ARPG player, knowing that the OG fan base and the ARPG crowd, the real ARPG crowd, seems to also be excited for this game makes me happy. And it really makes me want to support Grinding Gear games, even if I don't become a hardcore ARPG player myself for this game. I really, really respect when companies take care of their OG fans and the core of the genre fan base and don't completely ruin a game to try to get a wider audience. It doesn't seem like Grinding Gear is doing that with PoE 2, and I just love to see that. Love it, love it, love it, love it. And to kind of summarize everything here, some of you guys will just jump to this chapter marker. You guys don't even watch the videos. You just go to the final thoughts. I stand by what I said. I feel like this is the best feeling ARPG I've ever played in my entire life from an initial impressions perspective from someone who historically is a bit more of a casual ARPG enjoyer. This game feels really, really good. Once again, this doesn't mean the servers will be good on December 6th. There could be some serious problems, but the core of the gameplay just feels so good in this game, and it's really like, it feels like everything that I want in an ARPG. Deep progression systems and mechanics, a focus on end game versus just the campaign. Like Diablo 4 feels like it focuses more on just the casual campaign experience and then leaves all the end game stuff behind. Like it's not really that good. I really like to see that in this game, and the campaign also just feels like it has a lot to it. I mean, we're talking on average 25 hours for early access for acts 1 through 3. So when all 6 acts come out, feels like a pretty good experience for people, for even for those who just want to play the campaign and do nothing else, especially considering that the game will be free to play when version 1.0 comes out. I really, really love how the combat is meaningful. You have to be deliberate with your actions. You're encouraged to use multiple skills. There's a dodge for all classes to keep the movement feeling engaging, and you really have that sense of control over your character. And in fast-paced games, that sense of control is very, very important. I love that you can now use 2 weapons without it being like a bad thing to do in this game. That's going to add a lot of excitement and some really, really cool opportunities for really awesome builds. There's so many builds that you can do in this game. This is seriously a build guide YouTuber's wet dream. I don't do a ton of builds myself, but I am excited for those of you that do builds, because there's so much to do in this game. There's so much variety. The world is dark, mature, gritty, something that a lot of us have just been aching for with games, as we see games, you know, kind of Disneyfy themselves and are scared to be, you know, hardcore and real and show real blood and guts. This is it, man. The dark ass world. I'm excited for the story. I am pumped for Path of Exile 2. Now, with that said, it costs $30 to participate in the early access, but when the game actually launches, it will be free to play. So if you're hesitant, you know, just don't even join the early access. Just wait for the game to launch and you can actually play for free whenever that launch day actually is. But I am so excited and into it that there's not a chance that I'm not going to miss day 1 of early access. So yeah, bravo to Grinding Gear Games. In many ways, I kind of get, I don't want to say a Larian Studios feel fully, because I don't really know Grinding Gear Games like I know Larian, but I get that sense of passion coming from the devs. I get that sense of the company having freedom in creating what they want to create. And I get the sense of the company really being in tune with their fan base and what ARPG gamers want. They feel like a by gamers for gamers company, and in that way it does relate to Larian Studios. So hell yeah, I'm all for it. I'll be streaming the crap out of this game. I think I have a couple more videos planned. How deep I'll get into videos as the game goes on, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pumped for this one, man. I hope you guys enjoy it too, those of you guys that decide to jump in.